Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So this time I'm going to do another old school one because unfortunately I'm away at SEMA, and so I'm not able to sit down and cover all the news going on this week. But a lot of it is SEMA based anyway, and so if you're following me on Instagram, you probably have seen a lot of the social posts of some of the vehicles there and some interesting stuff that I've seen. But I wanted to do an old-fashioned weekly update where I talk about my car. It's been a while since I talked about the Bullitt, and that's also because part of it has been that I haven't been able to drive it a ton. I do have, of course, 3,500 miles on it now, but it's also just that there really hasn't been too much to talk about, and I know some people were getting tired of Bullitt videos, so I kind of pulled back on those for a little bit, and I'm always open to suggestions and ideas if there's anything you guys want to see. Obviously, I'm not doing any modifications to the vehicle. I'm not doing any kind of racing with it. It's just my fun daily driver, so that limits the content a little bit, but that's fine with me. I bought this car for me, and not as to be some kind of crazy race car or something to be constantly doing videos on. And I always want to focus on reviews and news, and that's kind of what this channel is about. But definitely, if there's any other stuff you want to see me do, I know some people requested a point of view drive video in the Bullitt here. Those are tough to do just because of legal reasons. I can't film myself speeding, and so if I'm doing the speed limit, it'll probably be a pretty boring video, unfortunately. So, but like I said, I'm always open to any suggestions you have, so let me know those in the comments below. Anyway, though, so a couple things I do want to mention about the Bullitt that I've observed here over the 3,500 miles that I've driven it. I put about 1,500 of those miles on it in the past 2 weeks here, and so I've been driving it a lot. It's just such a great highway cruiser. I absolutely love the way this thing just cruises. I mean, obviously, this is my fourth S550 Mustang at this point, so they're all relatively similar. I think this has, again, a little bit more of a smoother ride there with the Magna ride that mine has, and otherwise, though, I absolutely love it. But there are three little observations that I've made here over the past, few thousand miles that I want to share with you guys. The first is the heated steering wheel, which is a new feature here for at least for me, for my Mustang. It was something that was introduced in 2018 and is standard on all Bullitts for 2019. Even base models get the heated steering wheel, which is pretty cool. And the heated steering wheel is really nice. Gotta do a little acceleration. Also, these tires get a little twitchier whenever it gets colder out. It's only 53 degrees, so it's not freezing or anything, but I just noticed it's a little more easy to get tail happy. But anyway, getting back to the steering wheel. Now, it's a really nice heated steering wheel, and I've tested a lot, obviously being a car reviewer and driving lots of cars that have heated steering wheels these days, and I will say that this one is one of the best out there. It gets really nice and hot on the upper half of the steering wheel, and most of the bottom half of the steering wheel gets nice and warm, and actually after about 5 minutes or so, your hands get nice and toasty, so it does a really good job with that. The 9-3 grip is where I wish it got a little warmer. It doesn't get quite as warm at the 9-3 grip. I think part of that is just because you have less rim there, because you have the metal that comes out onto that part of the wheel, and it's just a little thinner in that area, so I think there's just less room for wiring or whatever to heat that part of the steering wheel, which is understandable, and it still gets nice and warm. It certainly is worth having, I think, especially if you drive in some cooler weather. I think it's going to be something you're really going to appreciate, and now that it's started to get colder here, I've definitely appreciated it a lot. This thing is just so much fun. It is very accessible, the power, it doesn't, blow your head off in the very first few thousand RPMs like you get with some of the other, muscle cars. And I've talked about this several times, but I really do appreciate how the power builds and how it doesn't have a ton of torque down low and a ton of power. But anyway, getting back on topic here. So heated steering wheel, very good. Next thing to talk about here is the fuel gauge, which is not so good sometimes. This is my only gripe that I really have about the Bullitt so far as like quality stuff. And so it's a very mild thing, but what I've noticed is that the fuel gauge can wander a bit, which is disconcerting for a fuel gauge. Other gauges, maybe not quite as big of a deal, but with the fuel gauge, so it only happened to me once or twice where, especially whenever it's lower in the fuel tank. So I think I had like 60 miles of range left, and I was cruising along, and then all of a sudden it jumped up to 90 miles of range, and I saw the actual digital part of the needle sweep up a little bit, and it kept bouncing back and forth, and I'm like, okay, so do I have 90 or do I have 60? And over the course of about 5 miles, it slowly went down really quickly from that 90 back to about 60, but then at that point it's like, okay, I've driven 5 miles, so now is it 55 miles of range, or was it just overestimating the 60 and had to recalibrate? I don't know what was going on with the fuel gauge, but it was like I said, it's a little concerning, especially whenever you're low on gas. The difference between 30 miles of range and 60, could eventually turn into something if you're really running it low, where you run out of gas if it's giving you an incorrect reading. And so, again, I don't usually run this vehicle on very low amounts of gas anyway, so it's a non-issue 99.9% of the time, but just, a brand new car should have an accurate gas gauge. Now, if we're talking about a classic car or something, those wander all the time, aren't super accurate, it's whatever. But in a brand new 2019 super high-tech car, you should be able to accurately measure the gas very precisely. And so, just one tiny little complaint there. The last thing to mention is in regards to fuel economy, another gas-related thing here. So, I've mentioned my fuel economy here in daily driving on, city streets and, suburban areas and stuff, and that has been very good. I've still been averaging anywhere between 18.5 and 21, depending on what exactly the mix is. I do mix a little bit of highway in from time to time, but I hadn't done a straight highway drive until past couple of weeks here, and I did my first straight highway drive and got 26.5 mpg, which I'm quite pleased with. Now, that is about 1.5 to 2 mpgs lower than what I used to get in my 2016 GT, and about 4 mpg lower than I'd get in my EcoBoost, but it still is 2.5 mpg higher than what Ford claims. The Bullitt, they only rated at 24 on the highway, and I knew that number was too low to be accurate. I knew it was going to get better than that, especially with the taller gearing here and 6th and stuff for these new ones with the 18s and 19s with the gearing for the manual. So I knew that was, I don't know why the EPA got such low numbers for their estimates, but yeah, 26.5, and then that was like a straight turnpike highway thing with almost no stopping, and so that's great though. I mean, 26.5 I'm very happy with. Like I said, it gives me a pretty impressive range here on a 16 gallon tank, and so that's also appreciated. On the way back from my road trip, they ended up taking me some weird way where I had a lot more red lights and stuff, but still a lot of highway driving, and even still I got 25.5 on the way back. So an average of 26 if you want to average that, but like I said, it wasn't the same road both times, so not really a fair comparison there, but still very good fuel economy nonetheless. And so, like I said, it's still all smiles here in the Bullitt. I still absolutely love it, and it just honestly makes me sad I can't drive it as much as I'd like to. But yeah, I mentioned not being able to drive this as much as I'd like, and it's just I have so many press vehicles and I have to drive those a decent amount to do a proper review on them. So that's the only thing that's holding me back, because otherwise I want to drive this thing constantly. I don't care about babying it or keeping it a garage queen or anything like that. I want to drive this thing and put as many miles on it as I possibly can. But that leads me to my last little thing I want to mention here is my plans for the winter for the vehicle. So unfortunately, because we get so much salt and the roads aren't great around here, I do plan on keeping the summer tires on it, and they technically have a temperature rating of 40 degrees. I apologize, the lighting is horrible with this sun, it's super bright, but so I'm gonna try and avoid driving it whenever it's under 40 degrees, but my buddy Jason, Engineering Explained, did mention, he did a test last year on summer tires in the winter, and how when it's dry, they actually have better grip than snow tires do, because snow tires are softer by nature, and so the braking distances and things like that are actually longer, even if a tire is out of its operating temperature within reason, and again, as long as it's actually dry out. So that gave me a little bit of confidence. Obviously I'm not going to be daily driving this in the winter whatsoever, but I do work from home, and I don't have to drive most of the time, and I do have press vehicles, a lot of the time, and my wife's vehicle I can drive and stuff for those wet or snowy days, and I do want to minimize the salt exposure to the vehicle as well, but I'm not super OCD about that. So I think my plans for the winter are that I'm going to obviously drive other vehicles as much as possible, but if there is a nice day where it's dry, I'm probably going to take the Bullitt out every once in a while just to circulate things a little bit. I don't want to winterize it and put a bunch of gas stabilizer in and, you know, mothballs and the exhaust pipes and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to do all that, and I honestly think cars prefer to be run more often instead of sitting for 6 months. So I would rather just keep everything circulating and continue to, you know, just drive the vehicle during the winter. So I think I will do a very limited amount of driving during the winter in it, and hopefully, you know, that'll all go fine. And I'll obviously be driving much more slower, taking it easy. I won't be, you know, trying to do any full throttle runs all winter or anything like that. But I think that's kind of my plan here for the winter in it. But I do have a ton of press vehicles. I actually have a press vehicle. Once I get back from SEMA, I have a press vehicle every single week scheduled until Christmas, and I'll probably have many more throughout the rest of the winter as well. But so I just, because of that, I don't have, you know, a huge need to drive this vehicle and expose it to extra salt and stuff. As much as I would love to drive it, I want to minimize the abuse in the winter as much as I can. So anyway, that's it as far as all my little updates here on the Bullitt. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on everything in the comments below as always. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.